now. Hello, everybody. This is Charles Key, your host of What's Your Story? And today I'm really excited. I've got to know this young lady before you. She's a breath of fresh air, and her name's Heather Hargrave. And before we get into her background, I'll just tell you, we met via social media, and one of the things that really caught my eye about her, and the thing I experienced most was just her strong will. She has such a strong will, and I just love her because she is as real as it gets. There's no pretense, and I fell in love with her immediately, and I think we connected on a deeper level than in a very relatively short amount of time. So I feel like we're kind of kindred souls in that respect. Anyway, I just enjoy her so much, and we're going to get into her story. And I know a little bit about her. She's up in Utah, which is an amazing place. So I'll throw it over to you. Tell people how you became an independent businesswoman. What were some of the things that led up to that decision? And then tell people what you do now.
What a great story. And get your popcorn, guys, because my story is a good one. So I believe my story shifted when I was about a teenager. Um, about 14 years old, I started noticing that my mom was broke and that we didn't have a lot. I mean, we 6 kids, my mom was single with 6 kids, and other people had things and we just did not have those things. And I started to notice that difference in how my mom thought and how other people thought, and it didn't really resonate with me very well. And even though I was a teenager, I started to pick up on the way that she thought about money and how other people did. And so it caused a lot of conflict between me and her. As you can imagine, teenagers have that butting of heads anyway. But as I started to pull away from what she was trying to teach me and trying to come into my own, it just did not work very well for us. And one day I got on a bus and just didn't come home anymore. I just didn't come home. And I knew that I was going to be in so much trouble because the buses ran out. There was no more buses back to Payson. I went clear to Orem, Utah, and there was no more buses to go back home. And I knew that I was going to be in so much trouble that I just made it worth it. I'm just going to stay gone until I'm made to go back home. And that's how I just lived on the streets for a couple of years. Weeks turned into months and months turned into years. And
Oh my
I
goodness.
slept at parks and I would stay up all night at coffee shops and things. And people were like, why didn't you go back home? Well, once I realized how free I was being away from my mom's house and a teenager, I didn't want to go back. I
So
just
you
did
were
not
you
want to
were
go back.
14 at this time?
I was 14. Yeah.
14 years old. Wow.
Yes. So I later on, fast forward through a couple of ridiculous relationships and things of that nature. I settled with my kids' father. I was a stay-at-home mom and still had this spirit about me that really wanted to grow and thrive. Okay, so this never died inside me and it never went to bed. And so when I had my own children as a stay-at-home mom, I went to college. That's what I was told to do, right? You go to college, you get good grades, you work really hard. I would have my babies sitting on my lap while I read to them and did my homework and had, all this time to have my stuff in order. And I went back to back with my semesters. I didn't take any breaks. Okay. So I went, fall semester, winter semester, summer semester, did not care. 4 years straight, just pushed through and just kept going. I later on got my master's degree because I realized having a bachelor's degree in health administration wasn't enough. It was like halfway through a doctorate. You can't do nothing as a doctorate. You have to keep going. You can't just stop halfway and work on patients. It's the same thing in my field. You couldn't stop halfway and be an administrator. So I went back to school and got my master's degree in health administration and went through a really sticky custody battle. I don't really want to go into all the details about that. That's a whole nother podcast. But I was working 2 jobs and volunteering for the hospital because people told me if you want to get a job in your field, go volunteer for the hospital. So I'm working 2 jobs, going to volunteering for this new hospital. And I
And
was
you
talking.
and I don't want to
Go
interrupt,
for it.
but I just want to make sure I got it straight. So
Yes.
I have to tie up. So you're on the street for 2 years. How did that reconcile with your mom? I mean, she had to be, beside herself with worry. As a parent yourself, you have to put yourself in her shoes. Now,
Sure.
what was the end of that? How did you guys get back together?
So I never went back home until I was an adult. I had to go for like 6 months, but I never went back home. My mom would call me on as a runaway. She put me into, detentions
Wow.
and stuff. And I always just left. I never stayed home, because you can't force someone to be home. Like there's
So
always a door, and I would
you
just
just
leave.
blazed your own trail.
Yeah, I would hitchhike a lot. Like, so if I wanted to leave, I just left. Like, there was no stopping me from going where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. Cops would take me back home, or they would take me to detention, like I said. And half the time I didn't even know like what they were trying to do. Like, I didn't know that they were like, okay, you need to work this out with your mom. Like, there was no going back for me. I did not want to go back. I fought so hard to be
So
gone.
you never went back to your
I
mom's
I
house.
never did until I was an adult through, some stuff happening with my kids' father, but only for like
Amazing.
6 months. No, I didn't want to go back.
I got you because I think I'm laughing about it now because probably in hindsight you know it's a serious, obviously to get to that point in your household it had to be a really serious decision, and even for a 14-year-old
Yeah.
you were looking for independence there. But I just remember I think the first time I ran away from home, I think I was not in my teens. I think this was like, I don't know, I might have been a toddler. And I just remember my parents calling my bluff saying, okay, well, we'll have dinner waiting for you when you get back and stuff like
I
that. But
think I think my mom was hoping that eventually that I would do that, but I never did. I didn't want to go back home. I had way too much fun. And I didn't want to go back home.
I love it. So
I went
anyway,
camping for like a month and all sorts of stuff. Like, no, I had a blast. It was a lot of fun for me.
that I was going to say that's enough for a whole nother discussion in another
Yeah.
day. We got to hear the rest of that story
Yeah.
until you became involved in a relationship, and then you had children, and
Yeah.
you got married. Is that right?
No, I never married my kids' father. I
Okay.
married when I was a teenager, but only for 11 months. And that was a really
Okay.
bad situation.
Okay.
Another podcast episode on that one, too.
Okay. And you have how many children?
I have two. I
Two
have a boy and a
kids?
girl.
And I know it's a boy and a girl, and then the ages are.
My son is 21. He just turned 21, and my daughter's 18.
That's right. So we both have
Yeah.
21-year-olds, and then I have a
Yeah.
16-year-old. So we have that in common. So okay, so let's get back on track to you're starting to put together your education and what you want to do for work. And I think we left it at you were getting a master's in health
Yeah. So my master's
administration.
degree, once I graduated, I was working 2 jobs and volunteered for the hospital. I worked 3 years straight, and people are like, how did you do that? Well, I worked 2 separate jobs. So I worked the weekend on one job and then the weekdays in the other job. And I felt actually really guilty for actually taking like a holiday off because I had holiday pay and I needed the money to fight for custody. So I literally worked 3 years straight, volunteering for the hospital, working 2 jobs, and never stopping there, taking a day off. I felt really bad about doing that because how could I do that? I needed the money. So I gave up my holidays to my kids' father because if they weren't with me, they should be with their dad. Um, People were telling me to volunteer for the hospital, just get my foot in there. I connected with a lot of people, asked for their advice. Um, so I was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years. And in Utah, that looks really bad because they're like, okay, you have such a gap between you being a CNA as a child and now having a master's degree. You don't have anything in between. And so people would want to keep putting me like below my education, but I had $145,000 worth of debt, for my college.
Sure.
And so I couldn't just focus on one thing. And when I finally got an opportunity to be an administrator, it was of a small facility, had maybe 4 patients there at the time. They had room for like 12. And it wasn't thriving or growing. They were paying me $1,000 a month. And that still wasn't enough to live. So I had to have 2 jobs there too. And they both were like, both my jobs were like, you have to be here. Well, my other job, my administrative job, if I didn't see and they didn't show up, I had to like be there. And so they were conflicting. They both were telling me you had to be committed. And it was like, it's not that I don't want to be committed, but they're both conflicting. And then one day, so my real estate investing starts here, where the owner comes in. One of the
So
owners come in. There were separate owners.
so just so I have it straight,
Yeah.
you're in a position that you've got an education and a background, and you had an idea of what you wanted to do for work, but it wasn't penciling out.
Yeah.
And you found yourself, if I may say, you found yourself in a survival mode.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was definitely behind my promises to myself, to my debt collectors, and my children.
So what happens now?
So I'm at this facility as the administrator, and this guy comes in, and he's one of the owners. I think there was three at the time of this when I was starting off. So there was three different owners that own this facility, and this one guy I didn't meet yet. I haven't met him yet. He came in on Sundays and would eat my bananas and mow the lawn, and I'm like, who are you? And like, why are you eating my bananas? Like, what's happening here? And he explained to me, Heather, like, I'm the owner. And I was like, oh, maybe I can ask this guy some questions. I have my administration, and my master's degree, and maybe he can give me some advice. And I asked him, I was like, how did you own this company? How did you own it? And he was talking about, all these angel investors and things like that. And I'm like, okay, I hear about these angel investors, but like, where are they? Like, how do you get connected with them? It just seemed like this, myth or this saying that people would say, but nobody really knew how to obtain them. And so I kept picking his brain. He's like, Heather, I am not in health, and I'm not in healthcare. I'm an investor in real estate. And I was like, what? My brain like popped on everything I ever thought I knew about business and strategies and stuff. And everything was just like, nothing about what's happening. I had no idea. So I'm asking him about real estate investing. He's like, Heather, every single Sunday when I come in, I'll give you another lesson. I'll teach you every Sunday a new lesson. He's like, your first thing is to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I got through that in a day, like one whole day, did not stop, just read through the whole thing. So next Sunday he comes over and he was asking me questions about it, what I learned about this book and the quadrants of, business and investors and things like that. He's like, well, where do you want to be? And I'm like, obviously a business owner investor. I mean, after reading that book, you can't even like argue with the fact that that's like the choice to be, right? And so he invited me to a group that was teaching me about stuff, but it was like they were giving me just enough information to like scare me. They were like, you can do it, but laws could change. And wholesaling is where you can make a lot of money, but you could get in trouble. You could go to jail. And I'm like, they're just giving me enough to like make me want more, but like scare me into like working with them. And so I'm working with them. And in between two jobs and still volunteering, I would find these homes and bringing them to them. And 2 weeks looking for these homes, and none of them worked out. None of them were a right fit. I didn't know better, right? And so I almost gave up. I'm like, nobody's going to share their information with me. Why would you want to? There's so much money to be made. Why would you want to? And so somebody within that group invited me to a different group that I'm still a part of today, 6 years later, self-employed for 6 years because of this group and the information they shared.
So the gentleman that we don't have to name him because
Yeah.
it's up to you. But
Yeah.
so that gentleman, in hindsight, now looking back, was he trying to mentor you or was he just trying to use you, in your opinion?
I believe that he had the best intentions. He didn't know there was a better way, and that's how he learned it, by paying his dues, let's say, right? He's like, Heather, you can work for free. You can do all this stuff. Like you can. And I think that he just didn't know any more to teach me than he was telling me. And so he was at this ceiling and I was at that ceiling because he was there too. And so if you have an investor teaching you that's here, how can you go any further?
Yeah,
Especially if you have no other connections, right?
You can only grow to the level of his knowledge.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So then what happens?
So then I met a different group that had a different mindset. They were not competing. They all knew that like the more people in this group, the more deals we could do. And I was talking to people and I was like, why are you sharing your information with me? They're like, Heather, there's 400 people on the NOD list. They're going to lose their homes to the bank. Let's help those people. I can't do it on my own, but I can do more with your help. And it just was like, this is where I need to be.
So these were distressed properties in some form in the foreclosure process. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
And then who in that group did you meet? Is this when you met Mitch?
Everybody. This is when I met Mitch Nelson, Maylee Nelson. This is when I met so many people. I can't even keep track of them. I still net with them weekly to this day, 6 years
Yeah.
later.
So now I met Mitch Nelson. I haven't met his wife, but you speak very highly of her.
Yeah.
And tell everybody about Mitch Nelson and what he does and just really quick.
So they have done 17 million in counting in real estate investing to this day. And investing is not just flips. You can do short-term rentals, you can do wholesaling, you can do notes, you can do so many things, contract for deed. Just like pick a path and do it. And then once you get that plate going, you just do another one because you're not really physically doing all of them at once. I do short-term rentals. I have them here in Utah, but I also do flips and things. I'm not sludging the hammer. I'm not working on all my properties. So when you have the knowledge, you can pull people together and then people are doing their parts. And just like any other company, I don't know any other person that owns a company doing everything in their business. And I don't think that people see real estate investing any different than that. Like they see these TV shows and people are working on their own properties, and that's going to get you one property a year. If you want to do 6 or 7 a year, you got to let people do their best, do what they're doing. I have my daughter did my interior decorating on my short-term rental. So I didn't even do any of that. I don't know how to interior decorate, but I hire people that do what they do best and let them do their job, and I can do more.
So that's great. You have a team around you now. And,
Yes.
Mitch is a tremendous human being.
Yeah.
And we can send some links to people because Mitch is an author. They have a podcast and you have a podcast as well.
I don't have a podcast. I'm on podcasts.
You're on
So I've been
podcasts.
invited to be on podcasts to say, I was thinking about doing a podcast and things, and that might be something I do later on. But right now I'm on podcasts. I've been on TV shows. I've been on radio shows.
But you're running your own group now.
Yeah, I have my own team. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you guys, how often do you meet with that group if people want to get involved and learn?
There is more things happening in a week than I can go to. Physically, I can't go to all these events happening that I go to maybe 1 or 2 a week.
So if someone wanted to get into real estate investing,
Yeah,
and just kind of look, what would, in your opinion, what are the things that they could do now? And then you could help them get started. What would you say?
reach out to me.
Okay.
Contact me. You don't have to do it on your own. I find that wealthy person that tried to do it on their own had nobody to thank when they didn't succeed. There's no reason to try and be wealthy or accumulate wealth on your own. There's no reason to have to navigate through that on your own. There's no reason for that.
That's awesome. So we'll tell people how to plug in with you and then get involved and put their toe in the water, so to speak, and do that. So that's great. And now tell me what else is going on with you.
So I also help people get on podcasts. So along my journey of entrepreneurial, it says you don't have to have just one path. There's so many people, I believe, that if they're a 9-to-5 worker, they believe that there's only one thing they do. If you're a firefighter, that's what you do. If you're a nurse, that's what you do. But when you're an entrepreneur, that's not the case. You have different things happening. You have so much time. You can have all these streams of things happening, and it helps you just continue to grow. And then if something doesn't work out, you've got all these other things happening. So that doesn't really matter, that one thing that didn't work out. And so I help people get on podcasts. I've been doing it for a business partner of mine. I've got several business partners. I've gotten him in contact with really big, so he focuses on dentists. He helps dentists do the research and development and the ERC. And so when I first got connected with him, he was like, Heather, get me on some podcasts. And so I connected him with Mark Costas. He's he's kind of the Oprah in dentistry.
Okay.
And when I connected him with that podcast, I don't want to say guru. I hate that word. It's kind of overdone to me, but he's just a really big influence in that industry. And when they connected, they started doing like master classes, seminars, all these things.
He's an opinion leader.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a cult because he's like, do this, and everybody's like, all right, let's do this. Do you know who I'm talking about? You're in the dentistry
So tell me his name again.
Mark Costas.
And how do you spell his last name?
Costos.
I've heard the name, but I haven't met Mark. But I work in similar circles, as
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
and I think in my specialty niche, I'm working with the implant surgeons. But
Mhm.
I guarantee if I went into LinkedIn, we're not that far apart as far as maybe we're first line connections. But I've
Oh
heard that
yeah.
name before.
Yeah.
So now your ability to help people get into a podcast. So
Mhm.
you're creating brand awareness
Yeah.
and for that person. Are these typically entrepreneurs like you or
Yes.
okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
so I help people that don't know how to create a bio, do not know how to contact those Facebook, though not Facebook. Let me rewind that and say that a different direction. I help people create those bios and also get in contact with those podcast hosts that are not advertising on Facebook. I find that a lot of people put their bios on Facebook hoping that somebody will say, yes, be on my show. But those people aren't very big and people are not reaching out to them just yet. So they're just taking anybody. You're not going to get exposure like that. Not that they're not good podcasts, not a good start, because some of those podcasts you do in the very beginning, you need practice. You need to like get
You
your
bet.
experience going, and that's fine for that. But once you get bigger and you have a bigger audience, you want someone that has a bigger audience. And so how do you contact those people? That's how I show people. I show people how to contact those podcasts and get those bios to get their attention. I also help people that are maybe a little nervous to talk on a podcast. Maybe they have this desire to get on a podcast, but they don't have the connection with self, with their awareness that they can do it. And so I help people also develop that too. Because it's scary to get on podcasts we've never done before, but you
Oh,
have something to say.
trust me, there's a lot of people that you talk about when the camera's on, they
Yeah.
behave differently. And I see it. I see people freeze up.
Yeah.
I've listened to speakers where it's painful and the self-consciousness comes
Mhm.
out when that camera goes on for some reason. Not with you
Yeah.
and me, but we had to develop that. So
Yeah, we absolutely had to develop that. And I also help teach strategies to help calm nerves before you get on a stage or in front of a podcast. Because even if you can muscle up the energy to get on there, like if you can just really hype yourself up just to get in front of the camera, when you start talking and you realize that recording lights on, people start to get nervous. And I help squash those nerves before they even pop up. I teach people strategies to squash that too.
that's great because
Yeah.
I work with in one of my I met this young woman through a friend of mine who's actually a feature filmmaker. He creates in fact, he won the Sundance Music Award for an
Nice.
independent film. And he connected me with this woman, and she covered sports. She was actually on a local station and she covered the Olympics. So she basically now is someone that helps corporate people become comfortable on camera. And that's
Nice.
kind of her niche. Yeah. And it's really neat to see especially in our field in dentistry, we
Mhm.
have, for every 4 students that come out of dental school, there's typically 2 female that come out. So there are a lot more females graduating from dental school. Then there's a foreign student. So a lot of people that English is not their first language.
Yeah.
Now you're having to get in front of a camera and talk to United States patients. So there's a lot of ways that you can help people, and that's a great thing to encourage them. Because let's face it, if you're going to create content as a dental practice owner, you could have the prettiest office, you could have all of the things that make up for a pleasant place, but if they don't get to know the doctor by that content in which you create, you're going to be trouble establishing a trust. They want to get to know the doctor. Absolutely.
It's true. I agree with that.
All right. So what else is we got to talk about what you do for hobbies, because it's like the most, I was just blown away when I saw. So Heather posts on her Facebook page, Heather Hargrave, you can look her up. she posts her workout and it is grueling. I mean, this is like half gymnastics, it's dance, it's such an expression. Tell us how you got into that and what's it called?
So I do aerial ribbon dancing. I also do pole dancing, but please don't label me as something other than just
Pole
aerobics
dancing with
because
clothes on.
yeah, because I like to do it just for fitness, and it's a lot harder than people think. To really
Oh,
hold on with your skin like that is incredible talent, and I'm surrounded by amazing women that are very talented, and my instructors are very talented. Um, so I do aerobic and pole dancing about 13 hours a week. I started doing that 2 years ago. Uh, I didn't realize they had it here in Utah. Honestly, I would have done it a long time ago, except for I seen this podcast, this Facebook post. This girl was doing it, and I was like, wow, I should do that. I love to do that kind of stuff. And I've always been fitness oriented. I love it. You know, I'm not quite the same smiling person without it. I I have to, or I'm kind of grumpy. I need to work out and get my wiggles out, or I just can't sit straight and hold still.
good for
Um,
you.
so that's how I got started about 2 years ago. I just didn't realize it was Utah, and I tried it out, and I've been an addict ever since.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, like you said, it's such an expression, a free expression, and it's a really beautiful art form. Yeah,
Yes.
and on top of that, you develop some serious upper body strength, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Flexibility and strength. And
Oh
so
yeah.
obviously that goes into the powerful leader that you are as a businesswoman. What are some other um, characteristics do you think that helped define you as an entrepreneur and a success?
I believe that who we surround ourselves with is very big in entrepreneurial, because I have found that people will do 15% more if they're surrounded by people doing more than them, and 30% less if they are surrounded by people doing less than them. I believe that you should have people around you that are doing things that you want to do and have experience in doing so. I find that a lot of people will ask their families for advice because they love them and they trust them, but their families may not have the credentials to even walk them through anything. So you're asking somebody that you love and trust, but they don't have any
So your
experience.
so your inner circle, I just read actually just listened to a statistic about,
Mhm.
let's say, whatever it is, whatever the number is in your inner circle. So if you're surrounded by people in your inner circle that you listen to and that you interact with on a frequent basis, if they're more successful than you
Mhm.
will perform at a 15% higher capacity, success
Yes.
rate, however you want to say it.
Mhm.
If you hang around people that are not where you want to be, lower performers, you'll
Mhm.
actually perform at a 30% decrease.
Yes.
So the numbers bear out what you're saying there.
Yes.
And so who's in your fab? What you have, is it Fab Five? I call it Fab Five, but
Why do you call it that? It's interesting.
I think it where it came from is um if you remember there was it was a clever little marketing thing on cell phones, and you could have people on your speed dial, and I think it was called who are your Fab Five. So those are the five people you could put that you could call with just one button
Mhm.
pushing. But I've and it could be more than that for some people. It doesn't really matter, but it's
Yeah.
those people that may already are where you want to go, right?
Oh,
They've
yeah.
achieved that status, that education, that thing. So that's a
Yes.
good point. Yeah,
Yes. So I don't know everything about real estate investing, and I don't have to. I
that's
have
right.
over 500 contacts in my phone. At any moment, somebody's done something that I've done. And maybe I get into a sticky situation and can't get out of. And I can say, hey, I have this situation that's sticky. How can I get out of it? And I have help. I have a lot of support.
That's
I
key.
also find that people that say they don't have enough, we are creatures of habit. We also want to prove. So if somebody's saying they don't have enough, they're going to prove they don't have enough. And so I think that people should be aware of what they're saying. If they don't have enough, don't go around saying, I don't have and try and prove it. Because then you're like, hey, my car's broken and my house is crap. You're doing everything you can to prove it. But if you say, yes, I'm successful, and successful means a steady pace to a worthy ideal. Success does not mean that you have everything you want. It just means you're taking steps to get there. And there's the difference between the two. People that say, I don't have money, but it doesn't make a difference. If you're taking steps, you are successful. So watch what you say. People need to watch what they say and how they say it, because you will start to do what you're saying. If you're successful, you will take steps to be successful. If you don't have enough, you will prove that you don't have enough. And I don't know if you know that one person that always says, I don't have. And then every time you see them, they're talking and trying to prove, hey, I don't have enough. Those aren't the kind of people that you want to hang around with. You want to be with the people that are being successful and they're taking action steps every single day to be successful.
Well, I think that, you really bring up a great point, and that's, you have to control your thought life to
Yes.
begin with. So, before you even say those words are powered by a thought.
Yes.
And more importantly, they're powered by how your perception of yourself.
Yes.
And, for me, it really took, and I was like you, I grew up I was the oldest of 5 children. My father sold cars. And so we worked on a commission only. If he sold cars, we had a good month. We ate well, we had good clothes. And if he didn't sell any cars, we didn't have a good month. And it was, all my mom could do to manage that sort of thing. God bless her, my family is as close as ever, and we all love each other. And my dad's now passed, but that model and what I saw, it took me a lot of years to overcome that vision of me that was defined by my own earthly father. So, I developed a strong faith in for other people. A faith is I see it, you have 2 choices. You can believe in you and go on the power of you, or you can believe that you were created by someone pretty special. And that's my belief is, God created me, created you. And we're not put on this earth, I don't think, to do life by ourselves or do it for ourselves. Imagine how much stronger you felt when you were in that group that were doing things for themselves, by themselves. Now you went to a group that were actually helping other people.
Yeah.
You've already described the situation. It's a whole different situation. So
yes.
I really do believe that you've been through a lot. You've overcome a lot. I'm incredibly proud of you. I think that,
thank you.
Your story is that you're an overcomer. You're still on a journey, but you're not afraid to take those risks that are necessary for an independent businesswoman, for an independent businessman like myself. We have to take risks. We have to rely on a team. We can't. We'll only grow as much as the people that we're surrounded by, because we only know so much. And I think that's, you kind of encapsulated that. So that's cool.
Yeah. I also think that being entrepreneurial is like a back spring. If you stop halfway, you're going to get hurt. You've got to continue and finish the full circle, or you're going to stop in debt. You're going to stop not knowing what you're doing, and you're going to really hurt yourself. And so I think that people should just go all the way. If you're going to be entrepreneurial, just surround yourself with that and really dive deep, invest in yourself. I invest all the time in my own knowledge, because either that goes to the government or goes between my 6 inches in my, my head, because all that's a tax write-off. Why wouldn't you invest in the knowledge that helps you grow your entrepreneurial business? So,
well, that's, that in itself is, that really drives the point home that, and I love your analogy, because if you're going to do anything in life that includes starting a business, that includes, it doesn't matter, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. I know lots of successful people that have gone the corporate route. They've played the corporate game, and they're now CEOs of companies. It doesn't matter. But if you do things that are what I call half-minded, or some people say the other word, half-assed. But if you do things and you're not all the way in it, you're exactly right. You're going to get less than the results you expected.
Yep.
And especially with your own business. And then be prepared to adapt. Because, like you said, I asked you earlier, I said, was it a normal, typical day? And you go, I don't have any of those as an entrepreneur. And that's part of the appeal, right? It's,
Yeah.
we wake up and however we spend our morning getting prepared for that day, we don't know which direction it's going to take us. But, the point is that there's room for business in the real estate market. You're helping people to become independent.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't been independent before. That's an amazing thing. And so I think that we're going to help people find you on the social media. We look forward. Do you have any podcasts that you're going to be on, or what's the next thing you want to talk about that you're going to be involved with?
Well, this is the next thing. I've got some podcast things lined up. I have always always a Zoom, always a meeting coming up. Next Thursday there's meetings, there's games and stuff that teach newcomers to use a velocity banking strategy that actually helped me wipe out 7 of my most stubborn bills. People can also use the same strategy to buy homes with their HELOC, which is also another strategy. A lot of people don't realize they can invest in real estate using a 401k plan. I actually read a statistic last night that a lot of people are pulling their 401k plans to help with emergency funds, and they could be pulling that out, creating wealth for themselves right now.
Oh, that's exciting.
During COVID, a lot of people lost their money. I know a person lost $33,000 when COVID hit, just like that. 401k plans were not created to create wealth. They were creating employees to stick around. That was it. It was not created to create wealth or a financial stability later on. It was to help people stuck to a job that never was going to be anything more than just a job, right? And so I think it's important to understand those things. And there's 5 different currencies. A lot of people think there's only 2. So if the only thing that people take away from this is 5 different currencies, not 2. So it's time, knowledge,